This episode of Burnin' Daylight is brought to you by Stetson Ranches out of Fromberg, Montana. Stetson Ranches is a multi-generational ranch family looking to build on that tradition and make a profitable and sustainable ranch that'll live on for many generations. They're a very diversified outfit, but they focus on the two things that really matter on any good ranch, and that's horses and cattle. Tina has procured some of the best foundation bloodlines from many different ranches across the West, from the King Ranch to 4-6s to many others. But they got really good, proven, sound bloodlines going back to Zan Parbar, Two-Eye Jack, Peppy Sand Badger, and Doc Bar, just to name a few. The mares they're really well put together. They're big, they're shapy, they're heavy boned, and they're athletic. Got a great mind to them, gentle disposition, and they're ready to go any direction you want to take them. She's breeding them back to some of the best studs out there. They got a really, really nice roan stud from the King Ranch that they're really excited about. They got a full crop coming up next year, I believe, and they're really excited about it. They also have a really unique, I don't know if I'd say it's one of a kind, because there's a lot of people doing direct to consumer, but they're for sure one of the best. They're running in registered Black Angus cattle, cows. They're breeding them back to registered Hereford bulls. That's going to give you an F1 cross. That calf's going to be a Black Baldy. And if you're not a cattle producer and you don't really care what color your cows are, when that steak shows up to you, then don't worry about it. Either way, all you need to know, it's going to be some of the best quality genetics. These things are going to take off on feed, and they're going to produce some of the best USDA prime beef that you've ever had in your life, and it's all delivered to your door on dry ice. It's a competitive price with just about any other beef that you'll find out there. But the cool thing is it's one family raises it all, and the only time those animals leave the ranch is when they're headed to the packers. So it's a really good deal, and it's some of the best beef you'll ever have in your life, and just a tremendous family to work with. They've got a really neat subscription program that they do. It's a monthly subscription. $125 a month gets you 8 to 11 pounds of beef. That's hamburgers, stew meat, roasts, and selected cut of steaks depending on the month. $125 a month. Use the promo code MOVEYOURASS, MOVEYERASS. That's all one word. Get you 20% off your first month. Go check them out, StetsonRanches.com for all the horse information, StetsonBeef.com to order some beef. Order some beef, damn it. And go check them out on Facebook and Instagram, Stetson Beef, and tell them you heard about it on Burnin' Daylight. Next up, we got Houston Boot Company, the official boot maker of Burnin' Daylight. My good buddy Jake Houston owns and operated. He's been making boots for about 5 years now. He's located there in Virginia City, Nevada, which is just a really, really cool town. It's very, very touristy, but it's neat if you're in the area. You should check it out. But Jake is... he's one of the best boot makers out there. He hadn't been doing it for near as long as some of these other folks, but I tell you what, I've had some custom boots in my day, and these are the best I've worn so far. They fit my foot like a glove from day one, and they look really, really sharp. I kind of told him what I liked and what I wanted in a boot, just kind of rough outline, and told him to have fun. And man, knocked it out of the park. It's 100% custom made, measured to your foot. He does all his measurements by hand, if possible. There's times where that doesn't work out, so he can send you a kit to measure it yourself. But from what he tells me, there's a couple different measurements that he can't really get a good hold of them unless he does it himself. Like it's hard for somebody to measure it, or if you don't know what you're doing, I guess. Anyhow, he can also send you a kit though. But it's all the best quality materials, 100% handmade, 100% custom made for you. And there's really good sharp looking cowboy boots. Give him a follow on Instagram at Houston Boot Co. And tell him you heard about it on Burnin Daylight. If you'd like to get a hold of him and talk turkey, and just talk to him in person or on the phone, give him a holler, 775-315-3022. Last but not least, we got Thunderbird Equine. Miss Jessica Pancost just moved her operation this past weekend, as a matter of fact. And she is now out of Sandia Park, New Mexico. But outside of that, everything else is the same. She'll be accepting clients throughout the month of June and July, I'm sure. She's focusing on vaquero-style horsemanship for your horse, colt, or mule. She'll work with mules. Not a lot of people will. Pretty ballsy, but you know what? Good for her. And from what I have seen and heard, she does an excellent job. She's looking to give your horse practical ranch type experience from a second generation trainer and a third generation rancher. Your horse will also gain roping experience in heading, heeling, breakaway, and ranch roping, or any combination of those. Colts, if you're sending your colts to be started, requires a minimum of 60 days, and owners can expect a quiet, confident, and respectful colt with all the right tools to move on to any direction of your choice or any discipline of your choice. Anything that's already started or older horses and mules in for finishing, they also require 60 days and can be expected to develop harder stops, collected frames, and precise movement through leg cues. Your horse or mule will develop the confidence to do anything you like under a saddle, whether that be mounted shooting, rope and trail riding, or general cattle work. At the end of the program, you'll receive 5 free lessons to reacquaint yourself with your new equine partner. If you'd like to get a hold of her, give her a call, 720-205-2996, or message her on Facebook or Instagram, Thunderbird Equine. Yeah. Anyhow, thanks to all the sponsors. I sure appreciate your support. And thanks to all my subscribers on Patreon. I appreciate all of you, you ladies and gentlemen. Been able to give away some pretty cool stuff. And so if you'd like to further support the show and be entered in some of these giveaways that we do, head over to patreon.com/Burnin Daylight. You can sign up anywhere from, there's several different tiers with several different benefits. And anyway, it's all cool stuff. You get bonus content. You get ad-free content. And this month we're giving away a custom snaffle bit from Matt Wilson. You can find him on Instagram at WampusCatSound. I gave him a holler. I said, hey, I want to give away a snaffle bit on the 4th of July, Independence Day. And I said, I want you to make it as obnoxiously American patriotic as you can possibly do. So I gave him a few ideas, and then he's going to run with it. So I really don't know what it's going to look like, but all I can tell you is it's going to be cool. And so head over to patreon.com/Burnin Daylight. Sign up at the $5 level or more, and you'll get entered in a chance to win that. So anyways, let's get into the show.
Your eyes up in the morning, beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horse is kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. You'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight.
Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're burning daylight.
In the saddle till the job's done right.
Well, howdy there, daylight burners. Happy Monday. Hope you had a good weekend. Got a bunch of shit accomplished and whatever else, or or not. It don't matter one way or another to me. I just hope you had a good weekend, I suppose. Didn't get a hold of Boots this week. I don't know what he had going on. I'm sure he was busy. He's a busy man. But anyhow, I did get a chance after I visited with Boots last week. I also visited with his daughter Lori, and she seems to be pretty excited about this whole deal that we got going on. And she's sent me some pictures. She's the one that sent me the pictures of Boots in the military, and she's sending me ideas of questions to ask and stories to have him tell. And we got something really cool here, folks, I think. So anyways, I'm really looking forward to talking to him again. But anyhow, since how he was busy today, and I didn't have much else planned. I recorded an episode earlier this week on Old West train robbery failures. I wasn't real happy with it, and then I found another one to add to the list. So we'll do that today instead. So everybody that tuned in to hear Boots today, I apologize. Anyhow, I guess for all those new listeners that are new to the show, came over just to listen to Boots and stuck around. It is mainly a comedy podcast, and is pretty unfiltered and not exactly family friendly. So if raunchy comedy is not your thing, I would suggest tuning into Boots and not a whole lot else on this network. But go ahead and stay subscribed, because I'll take all the downloads I can get. Anyhow, train robberies, the Old West. Train robberies are as much of a part of the Old West as as cowboys and Indians and gold mining, and it's train robberies, bank robberies. There's one of the first things that pops up in mind when it comes to the Old West. And for all the famous ones that you know, like the Dalton Gang, the Wild Bunch, the Younger Brothers, Jesse James, and there's been plenty of those that they were good at what they did. But the more you start, I like bringing you just obscure stories of the Old West, just something that you may not have heard before, because like Billy the Kid's been covered 1,000 different times, and what am I going to find to tell you that is anything different than what you've already heard? So I try to find something that, like Blackjack Ketchum. Not many people know about Blackjack Ketchum. That just so happened to be kind of a cult classic story from the part of the world that I grew up in, and it was pretty neat. Turns out there's a few more people that know about Blackjack than I thought, but still relatively obscure as far as the Old West goes. And we'll talk about Blackjack here today. But the more you look into all these, especially if you look for obscure stuff, the more common the theme becomes that while there were some very famous outlaw gangs and some very successful ones, more often than not, they were just kind of your petty criminals that had big dreams and not a lot of brains, kind of like criminals throughout the rest of history. And it's pretty entertaining when you really get to looking into it and see that really a lot of times these were just a bunch of dum-dums. And there was a lot of really pretty epic failures when it comes to train robberies. And I'm going to make this kind of a recurring segment from here on now, just like from time to time. But I got five different ones today. Some of you may have heard of, some you may not have. And if you're not new to the show, for sure, there's two of them you already heard about. But I won't go into to as much in depth as I did before, but just kind of a brief overview and just kind of hit on the comedy of the whole thing. So, first one I've got is the first ever train robbery in the United States, or at least the first recorded one. And I think at that point, you could pretty well safely say that this is the first train robbery. It was October 6th, 1866, somewhere in Indiana. Not sure exactly where. So just after the end of the Civil War, about a year or so after. So I guess they don't consider like stealing an enemy train robbery. It's not, if it's government sanctioned, it is not robbery. There it's reallocation or something like that, impounding. So if we're talking, if you lump the government in, the first train robbery was way before 1866. But anyhow, the first private train robbery, John and Simeon Reno, they jump aboard the Ohio and Mississippi. It's a passenger train right there in Indiana, and they walk through the train just like, I think they bought a ticket and everything, and they just cruised on through. No big deal. Just, hey, how are you? Just tip of the hat. Kept on cruising all the way till they got to, essentially it was a mail car, but it wasn't U.S. mail. It was Adams Express Company, and for whatever reason, I don't know that this article that I read, this one in particular article, I don't know exactly what their the significance of it was, but they made it a point to point out that Adams Express Company did a lot of their business by moving banknotes. So, this is kind of before paper currency. Or the paper dollar is all, they still minted the currency. They didn't print it. And but instead you'd have banknotes. So you'd deposit however much gold or silver in your bank account, and the bank would give you basically a checkbook. And that's kind of what this was. And for whatever reason, they really made it a point to make note of that. And you'll find out here in just a second. But they anyhow, they cruised on through there, and they get to the express car. They put their masks on. Apparently, COVID restrictions were in place for the Adams Express Company, and they held up the guard, and they pointed a gun to his head, and they started rounding up all the loose stuff, and there's two safes there, at least two, and they said, "Hey, get these things open," and he managed to open one. Tried as he may, couldn't get the other one unlocked, and they decided, well, let's cut our losses right here. And so they gathered up their haul, moved on down the line. They hit the stop cord. It's like on public transportation, like the bus in the city. If there's nobody at the bus stop and you need to get off there, you just pull the cord, and they'll pull on over. And basically, it was kind of what they did here. They pulled for the brake, train stopped, and off they went. And nobody was the wiser as far as the train went. And the train kept on going, but Adams Express Company and the train company itself, what was it, Ohio and Mississippi, had a very close working relationship with the Pinkerton Agency, and they were all over it. and the Pinkertons arrested him shortly after. They posted bail. They ended up making away with $33,000 in gold. Remember, this is 1866. That's a pretty good chunk of gold. Well over 100,000 worth in today's dollars. And then they made it a point to say that they made out with $33 in banknotes. Why that was significant, I do not know. But I'm relaying the information as it was transferred to me. And for some reason, that was a significant point in this article. I do not know why. You got literally 1/1000th of, 1/10,000th of their total haul was in banknotes, but because they moved banknotes as a I don't know that for whatever reason this is a little autistic what's OCD part of my brain that just like why point that out? Why would you make a note of that in your article? I don't understand, but for whatever reason, there you go. Now I went off on a tangent of it, so therefore, 2 pieces of media have deemed that the banknote thing was necessary enough to talk about. So there you go, Adams Express Company. Hats off to you. Anyhow, they posted bail, and while they were awaiting trial, there was one eyewitness to this whole deal. That would be the mail clerk or whatever he was, the guard for the Adams Express Company. He mysteriously ended up dead, and without an eyewitness, the Adams Express Company and Ohio and Mississippi had no evidence which to bring a case against them. They were acquitted or just charges were dropped. However, in an ironic twist of fate, a train was robbed in that same general area 2 years later, 1868. And in a public uproar and outcry against these such heinous attacks on the railroad, they whipped up an angry mob, and John and Simeon Reno caught up in it, and they hung them. Whether or not they were in any way connected with this second train robbery, I don't know. I couldn't find any evidence to point either way. However, if they were not, then pretty ironic. Anyhow, moving on. The next one I've got is poor old Elmer McCurdy. You guys know him. He was the traveling dead man, freak show, sideshow, however you want to call that. But he was the guy that he was far more famous after he died because he was a really lousy bank robber. So his first bank robbery, him and a gang, and he was just kind of a ne'er-do-well. It bounced around the East Coast where he was from. I can't remember exactly where like Massachusetts maybe. Did a couple odd jobs, never really succeeded in anything. Joined the military, got sent out, was posted at like Leavenworth, Kansas, Fort Leavenworth, and was in the Army as an explosives engineer, which back in those days there wasn't much engineering that went to it. There was a lot of explosives, not a lot of science, and your standard operating procedures are kind of just like put powder here, put fuse here, and eventually go boom. Anyhow, this is what Elmer McCurdy, he was I think he ended up being like a corporal maybe. I can't recall off the top of my head, but anyway, that was his area of expertise within the military. He ends up down around Bartlesville, Oklahoma, and him and his gang hop on a train, and it would have been a pretty damn good haul. Had about $10,000 worth of silver in the mail car. They boarded the train, stopped it, planning to charge on the safe, and kaboom! And it was way too big of a charge. This is also kind of a recurring theme throughout the West, and train robberies, and the U.S. military too. Is like I was explaining, there was not a lot of. It was kind of a, just learn as you go type process, and with TNT and dynamite and gunpowder, they're a little bit unforgiving as they tend to combust rather violently. So while there was a lot of firepower, there was not a whole lot of finesse, if you will. And it's not like the door charges that they use to breach doors in Iraq and Afghanistan now, where it, one little charge and then boom. It's not near as cool as the movies make it look either. I'm sure all you military guys can tell me how that shit actually really works as compared to what you see in a typical action war movie or something, where nice little neat charge and boom, the door goes flying in, but not much else. This one, however, they blew the safe. They got that part done, but whatever silver was in it was just all melted down into a blob, and then just like basically just welded to the frame of the safe. I mean, it just melted down and just seized on it, and yeah, they ended up making away with about $1,500 worth of jewelry and cash from the passengers of the train. And shortly after that, it wasn't a train, but it was a bank robbery. He also put way too much dynamite on the safe. And the way he placed it, it actually blew the safe door back through the lobby of the bank, and damn near decapitated the bank president or the manager or whatever, the head honcho there. Just about got the kibosh from a safe door coming from like 2 rooms over. But the final act of Elmer's mortal life here on this earth was a pretty sad operation. Once again, started off with a really good plan. Had a train headed from somewhere in Kansas, headed down to the Indian Nation, because this Oklahoma was still Indian territory, and it was a bunch of banknotes going to the Cherokee Nation, and it was all on the mail car. $40,000 worth is what was on there, and boy howdy, they go whipping down there. They get their train boarded slick as you could ever ask. The one crucial detail that they missed was what time their train with the $40,000 was going to be headed down the line. And it turns out there was no mail car on this particular train. There were no banknotes, and they ended up getting away with about $40 worth of cash, maybe a couple $100 worth of jewelry and stuff, and 2 gallons of whiskey. So sorry about your bad luck, Elmer. And him and his gang, they split up their wares. Elmer had been known as kind of a raging alcoholic, so he traded away most of the valuables for 1 jug of the whiskey. So he got a full gallon of whiskey and maybe a couple bucks. And he made it back to this old man's barn, and he spent the night there. However, detectives and the posse was right on his tail, which you would think he should have expected, seeing how he just robbed a fucking train. The wrong one. But apparently that was the least of his worries, because he got good and drunk, and I'm making fun of him as I'm drink my own little sauce here. But however, I have not just robbed a train either. Or have I? No, I haven't. But you'd think, until you are in the clear, like a couple counties over at the very least, preferably a state line or a couple state lines in between you and where this botched train robbery happened, I would kind of lay off the sauce until then. But no, he gets rip-roaring drunk. Posse catches up to him. They have a shootout, and they end up shooting him in the barn. I think the barn catches on fire at some point. Anyhow, poor old Elmer McCurdy leaves this life. And that was like 1904 or something like that. It was one of the last. It wasn't the last train robbery of the old West, but it was one of them. And the weird thing about him was they take him back into town to the undertaker. They get him all embalmed and whatnot, but there's no next of kin that they can find. There's no family. And there's nobody to claim the body, basically. So the embalmer, or the old undertaker, he keeps him around for a couple years, and finally he's like, well, he's just taking up space in the back, got this corpse that I just can't get rid of. I wouldn't have bought this much damn inventory if I had known that nobody wanted a damn corpse. Well, I'll just move him to the front. Maybe I can get him moved. So he ends up propping him up in his display window, which apparently wasn't all that uncommon back at the time, because being a free market venture, the undertaker at the time, now there's a whole bunch of licensing and whatnot, but at the time, you just had to make a dead body look good and put him in a casket. And then, from there, that's the end of your job. I think. I don't know. I'm kind of talking out my ass on this one, but anyhow, apparently it was pretty common to have these basically display models up in your window if you're an undertaker back then, because you wanted people to see how good your dead people were going to look before you put them in the ground. I'm a big fan of the cremation stuff nowadays. The whole, especially open casket funerals are kind of strange. Anyhow, yeah, I'm a big fan of the cremation stuff. Put a picture. That's I'm good with that. But back in those days, they had to chop a lot of firewood to cremate somebody. So, chloroform or formaldehyde, I guess, was a lot cheaper than that. A lot easier, and then you could make them look good. So you prop them up in your window and say, hey, look at how good of an undertaker I really am. When it comes to the big swinging dicks of undertakers, I got the biggest one. Like Ron Jeremy size swinging dick of the undertakers. Look at that guy in my window. Look at that. He looks halfway real. Well, Elmer McCurdy, he got propped up in this old boy's window. Eventually, like he'd charge him a nickel to get their picture taken with him, and then a couple boys came in saying they were brothers. They just heard word that he had died, and that could they please have their brothers' bodies to have a little bit of closure, give him the proper burial he deserves or didn't deserve. He's kind of a piece of shit, really. But we're in a good Christian nation, so we'd say everybody deserves a good burial, I suppose. And anyhow, Undertaker man wasn't real sold on him, but what else are you gonna do? It's time to rotate out the next dead mannequin. Give the customers a little little spice up, little old switcheroo, give change of scenery, if you will. So they say, all right, take him off my hands. Well, turns out his instincts were right. These guys were real pieces of shit, and they bought old Elmer McCurdy's body, and they paraded him around the country. He was part of a traveling freak show. They had some sort of system where maybe there was a bunch of tickets, like a roll of lottery tickets or like raffle tickets up in his mouth, and you could like pull one from, or maybe you had to put your money in his mouth. I can't remember. It was fucking weird, man. It's really weird. Anyway, he made it all the way to like the 1970s when he was part of a TV show, The $6 Million Man, and they thought he was a wax dummy. He was just like in a Hollywood prop, warehouse or whatever, and they were using him for this episode of $6 Million Man, and like he fell apart, and then upon closer inspection, they realized, no, this is an actual dead guy. And he finally got buried back in Oklahoma. But yeah, what a weird, like terrible train robber. Funny story though. The next one I mentioned right at the beginning was Blackjack Ketchum, Thomas Blackjack Ketchum. Down in my neck of the woods where I grew up, he's famous for having his head popped off when they hung him for a second time in short succession. They hung him, didn't kill him, didn't break his neck. They didn't have the noose set right, or they didn't stretch the rope right. It was the first public hanging and the last public hanging in the county's history. Blackjack Ketchum, him and his brothers, one brother, and a couple other buddies had a pretty successful gang. They're outlaw gang that their primary they would hold up these little stores, and then they would rob trains, and they were pretty good at robbing trains until inner gang rivalries and ego problems. It's just like any good band, when you got rock stars of high quality, every single part of your band, from your drummer to your front man to your lead guitar to your bass player, they're all like creaming of the crop, and they all know it, and they just never can get along. They make such great music, but they can never agree on anything, and then the band breaks up, and somebody marries a fucking Yoko Ono. I don't even care about that. Yoko Ono is actually kind of cool in my book. I'm not a huge fan of the Beatles, so yeah, whatever. Anyhow, that's kind of what happened with the Ketchum gang. But what they would do, which was pretty genius on their part, is they would build a fire or something across the tracks, force the train to stop. They would board it, find the mail car or whatever. They would unhook the car, let the rest of the train go. They'd drive it down the tracks a little ways, and and then if anybody got killed, it was whoever the mail clerk or the guard on the car was. But typically, they didn't kill very many people. But they got greedy. The gang got a little bit bigger. They got a little bit more reckless, and pretty soon the law, long dick of the law, just fucked them down, just one after the other. And by the time they caught Blackjack Ketchum, they'd already got his brother and one of his other accomplices, kind of his one of his lieutenants, I guess, if you will. But at this point, they were no longer running together. Apparently, Tommy Blackjack was he was a real dickhead, and they didn't get along, and it was Blackjack's way or the highway, because shit, man, he's the one with the reputation here, so you gotta, he's a peacock, Captain, you gotta let him fly. And so anyway, he's left to doing his final job solo, and he's used to having a whole gang with him. But you know what? He almost just damn near pulls this thing off. His brother had got shot, and one of his buddies who got hung shortly later. His brother was gonna get hung, but died before he ever made it to trial, I believe. Maybe he was waiting on execution and died from his injuries. But anyhow, right there in northeast New Mexico, right along the Colorado and Oklahoma Panhandle, right in that three corners region of the world, old Blackjack robs his final train. He goes to the tried and true method, causes a big diversion or obstacle on the track, causes the train to slow down, stop. He hops aboard, and he goes back to the mail car, the bank car, and he goes to unhook it, but there's one slight little problem. He parked on a hill, and he also parked on a curve. When the train finally got stopped, it was on a curve heading uphill, and from that particular angle, he could not get the pin out to separate the mail car. In the meantime, the engineer had enough of this bullshit. He's like some angry little Indian dude. I mean, India Indian, running a 7-Eleven or a Quickie Mart there in the inner city that's just getting robbed at gunpoint every couple of weeks. He's had enough of that horse shit. So he comes back there with a sawed-off shotgun, because that was the weapon of choice for the engineers, apparently. And old Tommy tries to get the jump on him, doesn't quite make it. The old boy just about saws his arm off with that scattergun, and Blackjack, he jumps off the train, makes it over to his horse, but since his arm's just about cut in two, he can't really crawl up on his horse. And I don't know if he had a good horse. I'm guessing he had a pretty decent gentle horse if he was using it to rob trains. But then again, you read some of those stories from back then, you listen to some stories that Boots tells, and you remember this was a good almost 50 years before Boots started punching cows for his first job. So imagine the horses back then. So maybe, I don't know, maybe he just couldn't waller himself back up on that horse because the horse was kind of a pisshead, and maybe his arm was in that bad a shape, and maybe it was a little bit of both. I don't know, because these guys were known to be pretty good cowboys. So I would imagine either it was a bronky horse, or at least little shy on the ground, or he just could not physically pull himself up. I don't know. Anyhow, he gives himself up when the posse comes riding after him. He just kind of stayed right there by the tracks since he couldn't get up on his horse. And he's like, well, fuck it. This is it, boys. Well, as I mentioned before, they take him in, and there's a big spectacle. First and only. They didn't know it was going to be the only one at the time, but it was the first public hanging in Lincoln County, New Mexico's history. And people came from many miles around to watch it. They led him up to the gallows, put the hood over his head, or put the noose around his neck, hood over his head, dropped the floor out from under him, and they either didn't set the knot properly or they didn't stretch the rope. However, and old Blackjack was a pretty stout fella. His neck absorbed most of the shock, didn't break his neck, and rather than just watching him choke out there at the end of the rope, they wanted to do it properly, so they raised him back on up, hung some sandbags to his feet, and trap door goes again, and down they go, and it just popped his head clean off. And that was the only hanging in Lincoln County, New Mexico history, public hanging anyway. So what a way to go out, huh? What a way to go out. That was old, like a folk story from back home. True story, but Yeah, you don't hear about it much outside of that little corner of the world. Next one I want to talk about is a pretty good one. This guy, I don't know exactly what his name is, or at least how to pronounce it. But seeing how my wife is a Spanish teacher, I'm going to go with Spanish pronunciation. But this one involves the number 9 Galveston, Harrisburg, and San Antonio Railway. And this was also kind of towards the tail end of old West Bank robberies, somewhere right around the 1900s, 1904, 1908. But a fella named of Ben Kilpatrick, he was a former member of the Wild Bunch, had done many jobs with them, with the Dalton gang there. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid was really living it up. Pretty good outlaw, it seemed like. However, he'd got pinched in Georgia, spent 10 years in the state pen there in Georgia. Well, he gets out and he hooks up with a fella named of it's O-L-E is how you spell his name. So I don't know if it's Ol or Ole, but like I said, seeing how my wife's a Spanish teacher, I'm going to go with Ole. Ole Hobeck and Ben Kilpatrick. And they board the train at Dryden, Texas, and this thing's headed towards the border. They wait till it gets a little ways out of town, right about 10, 15 miles from the border where they got some horses stashed. They storm the engine. And, well, once they get in there, they grab the conductor and everything, and then there's a messenger for Wells Fargo named David Trousdale. Turns out to be a pretty big hero, and he actually makes a bunch of money this day. Well, they order him at gunpoint to take him down to the money, and he basically just kind of leads them on a wild goose chase. And I don't know if they... it's not like they had access. I don't know if you could tap into the telegraph lines from there, but there's two of these fellas, and it seemed like they were both with the Wells Fargo guy. So I don't know if they were able to relay information back real quick or whatever, but this guy, or maybe this David Trousdale, just had a giant set of balls on him. Either way, he just kind of acts like he forgets where all the money is, and so he's leading them around, and they're prying a crate open here and there, and oh no, these are watermelon. Oh, this is cotton. Oh, this is fried chicken. I'm just going with every black stereotype there. But there's also happened to be a crate of oysters, and there was a wooden mallet on there. I don't know how big this mallet was, and it's another one of those OCD, slightly autistic part of my thinking that you'll figure out here in a minute. But Trousdale, as he's distracting them by pointing at this crate and that crate, whatever, he sneaks that mallet from him, and first chance he gets, he attacks Ole and just whacks him 3 good times with that mallet, just right in the head, just whap, whap, whap. And it said it splattered his brains on the wall. So that leads me to ask, was this like an oyster cracking mallet, or was this like one of those great big dead blow mallets? It said wooden, but it did not specify from there. Now, if it was like one of those big, like 3 or 4 pound wood mallets, I could see that. A big stout fella just whap, just smacking the shit out of somebody. And I imagine that first blow dropped him, and he just went 2 more quick ones, just like right before the ref would jump in and stop it. Just go pap, pap. And then I could see that happen if it was a big, heavy mallet. But if it was like an oyster cracking mallet, man, I don't see how you would splatter somebody's brains with only 3 whacks at him. And maybe that's just a morbid way of thinking, but once again, that was a part of the story that really stuck out in my head, and I wish they would have clarified. It would put my mind at ease. Anyhow, Ole's brains are all over the wall. And old David Trousdale, he grabs Olay's gun. Him and old Ben Kilpatrick have like a 3-hour standoff, and it's mostly Ben doing the shooting because, according to the sources I read, old David Trousdale only fired one shot, and that was right through the left eye of old Ben Kilpatrick. So, I don't know, how some events throughout history kind of get romanticized. So maybe they had a sure enough shootout, and they were both firing back and forth at each other. But according to this one, David Trousdale only shot one shot, and the notches on his pistol numbered 1 in 19 more, something like that. Just had to really romanticize it. Can you imagine getting your brains clubbed in by a wooden mallet that some Wells Fargo dude pulled off a oyster crate? Yeah. And then the final one I'm going to talk about tonight, called the Siskiyou Massacre, happened in 1923, widely regarded to be the last of the Old West great train robberies. And like all these other great train robberies I've talked about tonight, it was a rumbling, bumbling, stumbling, shitty sort of an affair. Happened outside of Silverton, Oregon. 3 brothers, Ray, Roy, those 2 were twins, born in 1900, and their little brother Hugh, and last name was D'Atremont. Originally from Iowa, I believe. One of the twins, Ray, was involved with some sort of, I don't know if it was like a post World War I, like former soldiers union, or if it was like an actual labor union strike or something. Ended up in jail for being associated with a group called the Wallabies. But outside of that, none of them really had any criminal past activity, whatever. But they board the number 13 Gold Special train, and they're hoping to make away with about $40,000 worth of gold that they think is going to be in there. So this number 13 Gold Special train has been running for a long time in the Siskiyou Mountains there of Northern California and Southern Oregon. But by 1923, the gold run's pretty well played out, and even though that train goes back and forth a whole bunch, there's usually not a whole lot of gold on it. But for whatever reason, they're pretty sure there's about $40,000 worth of gold, even though there's not much of anything that led them to believe that there wasn't really much evidence produced that they said this is why we think there's that much gold. Anyhow, they wait till they get right smack dab in the middle of Tunnel 13. And they force the engineer to stop the train, and they make their way back to the mail car where they think all the gold's going to be. The mail clerk's inside there in the mail car. He sees them coming with their sawed-off shotguns. Well, he's got one of his own, and he must have been a double barrel because he fired 2 rounds. Doesn't really hit anybody. Well, they keep coming, and he's they got the windows guarded, so if he's trying to shoot him, whatever, they'll be able to blast him first. And they're kind of covering the door, and they set this dynamite charge, which they thought was going to be just enough to do the job. So they get back, and old Ray or Roy or Hugh, I can't remember which one, but somebody pulls the plunger or pushes the plunger down, and once again, in typical Old West fashion, even though this was 1923, they stayed true to the roots of the Old West, just hanging on to tradition, hanging on to tradition with every last fiber of their being. They used way too much dynamite. The entire mail car was incinerated. the little mail clerk inside, Daughtry was his name, basically liquefied. Like you just took him to an industrial grade blender and then just sprayed him all over the inside of that mail car. Also, it pretty well filled the entire tunnel with smoke and debris and fumes, and you couldn't see shit. And it was also a passenger train. They had waited to board this train, so it slowed way down for this tunnel. Not only because the tunnel was narrow and dark, but they weren't moving very fast to begin with because they had a couple load cars and then they had passenger cars, and they had waited until it was like the engine, couple of coal car, a couple other cars, mail car, and then something else, and then the passenger cars. And so their plan was blow the door, unhook the mail car from the passenger cars, and then make the conductor just keep on cruising. Well, in the meantime, they're looking for all the loot inside the blasted mail car, but from all the smoke and the guts and brain matter and blood everywhere inside there, they're having a really hard time finding anything of value. In the meantime, the brakeman comes running up to, he made his way through the fog of smoke and the fumes and everything to figure out what the hell was going on. Well, he sees these guys standing around with guns, and well, he knows what's up. Well, they shoot him dead. Well, not quite dead. They shot him twice with the shotgun. Ray shot him with a shotgun. Roy shot him with a Colt, and he was all but dead. Wasn't quite dead. Once they figure out they can't salvage anything from the mail car, they go ahead and shoot him in the head just for good measure. In the meantime, they try to uncouple the cars, but the blast. And I'll have a picture in the blog post on my website. With all the show information. I'll put a picture of the train car that they blew up. And well, because of that, there was way too much damage to the coupler. They couldn't get the car unhooked, and they also couldn't even get the train to move because they were parked on just enough of a grade that they couldn't get any traction, and that train's locomotive's wheels were just spinning and throwing sparks and not getting anywhere. Well, after much debate, they go ahead and they execute the engineer and the fireman there. And then they make off with absolutely nothing. Well, they get away with it for about 4 years, but this was also while it was the last real train robbery of the Old West, it was one of the first cases that ever brought the field of forensics as we know it now into play. And while there was still very rudimentary stuff that would be beyond commonplace today, it was very groundbreaking stuff at the time. And this professor from the University of California named Heinrich studied all the state's evidence, all the evidence they collected from the train and the scene of the crime. They were able to track a bunch of stuff down, including a pistol. They found a box or a collection of stuff that included a pair of a green jumpsuit, logger's jumpsuit, and this was really the key piece of information that led them to find out who these guys were. Was the fact that this green jumpsuit that was used by loggers was wore out in the right shoulder. The guy deduced that the man that wore this was from this height to this height, and roughly in this weight range. And he was also a lumberjack, and he was also left-handed because the wear on the right shoulder suggested that he was leaning with his right shoulder against the tree while chopping left-handed. Well, all this all checked out. They found out who these guys were. One problem was, though, they didn't know where they were. And if it wasn't been for wanted posters and the first iteration of modern crime scene forensics, and good old just dumb luck / blind stupidity, one of the two, little Hugh, the youngest of the Hugh decided to go ahead and join the army, and got stationed in the Philippines. And one of his fellow soldiers recognized him from a wanted poster. He ended up being detained. Shortly after, they found his two twin brothers, or not his, they weren't his twins, they were his brothers that were twins, Roy and Ray, somewhere in Ohio. They all get rounded up, face trial, convicted, sentenced to life in prison. All three of them eventually made parole, or at least out of prison. And one of them lived to be 83. One of them lived to be 84. It was pretty, pretty incredible that you imagine, you're just like, imagine like you and your buddies like at 18 years old. It's like, how are we going to make a bunch of money real quick? I remember somebody talking about it way back in the day, and I know nobody ever followed through with it, thank God. But there was talk about like the best way to rob an ATM. And there's always, if at least with your guys, if you're a guy, Dane Cook, has that whole bit about how guys like a heist, and that is very much true. Yeah, there's something a little bit thrilling about that. So I don't even know where I was headed with that, but oh yeah. So I mean, just imagine you and your dumbass buddies at 18 years old, trying to figure out the best way to steal an ATM, and you think you've got just the best plan on earth because you've done all this research. And even back then they didn't have Google. They barely had public libraries. But there's always, word of mouth about how this train got robbed and how that one got robbed and blah, blah, blah. But still, you're a bunch of young, dumb shit kids making this plan that you haven't thought out at all, really, but you think you really have. And then just imagine trying to act on that. And it turns out exactly how you would expect it to turn out, especially with these the Atremont brothers. I mean, first of all, there's probably not any gold in there. Second of all, they used way too much dynamite, and not only did they inadvertently kill their first victim, but they liquefied him, and then they couldn't. They caused such an explosion that they couldn't see shit. They couldn't find any loot, even if there had been any loot. It's not at all a certainty that they're even going to come up with it, or they're going to find it after this explosion. And then they make away with nothing. And 4 years later, they spend just about the rest of their lives in prison. Oh, there's times where I'm glad I didn't grow up in the Old West, because I'm sure I would have had some brilliant ideas to rob trains and stagecoaches and shit, and I probably would have got shot in the asshole by somebody. So anyhow, don't rob trains. I think they'd be a little harder to rob nowadays, and you'd find one with lumber. Whew. He'd be a rich fella or lady. Hey, anybody want to go Bonnie and Clyde with me? We'll find a lumber car on a train. Then we retire early. Just one hit. That's what it always, just like that one last job. Except that'd be the last job, the one last job, the one and only last job. Let's find us a lumber car. If anybody finds one, tag me on Instagram, and we'll start making plans. Outside of that, Go like, rate, subscribe, review, all the horse shit. Please share the stuff around so as many ears and eyes are on it as possible. Appreciate it, everybody that keeps tuning in. Follow me on social media at Move Your Ass. Patreon.com/Burnin Daylight for extra content, ad-free content, and cool stuff. Also access to the cool giveaways this month. Custom snaffle from Matt Wilson. We're making it Marca as fuck. Been kicking around some ideas. I don't want to spoil it, so I'll let your imagination run wild because that's what we're doing. Anyway, it's going to be a cool, really cool bit. We'll give that away on the 4th, Independence Day, motherfuckers. Anyways, have a wonderful week. Hopefully Boots has time to visit next week. And until then, move your ass. We're burning daylight.
Your eyes up in the morning, beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horses kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. You'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the saddle till the job's done right. Burning daylight. Well, life is just a gather, and you won't catch 'em all. But when you ride through the gate, make sure you sit up tall. I can see the horizon, it's looking pretty bright. Well, get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight.